Finn and the Whispering Shell. Finn was a curious 7-year-old boy who loved the sea, and every morning he walked along the soft sandy shore with his red bucket and his green spade, looking for shells and stones and seaweed while the waves made soft music on the beach. And one clear day he found a small white shell that looked plain but felt warm in his hand, and as he held it close to his ear he heard a faint voice that said, "Follow the tide to find a new friend." And Finn was surprised and listened again and heard the same words, so he looked around and saw his best friend, a little hermit crab named Crabbie, crawling toward him under a rock, and Crabbie held a small piece of pale blue sea glass in his claws. So Finn took the glass and noticed it had a gentle glow. And when Finn looked back, the shell was still in his hand, and it whispered again, "Go to the old pier at high tide and bring light for the dark waters." And Finn felt both fear and excitement because he loved to help his friends and he liked to be brave. So he said, "Yes, I will do this." And Crabbie clicked his claws in agreement, and together they ran along the shore toward the old wooden pier where the long pilings were covered in green moss and sea stars clung to the wood, and the air tasted salty and fresh, and the wind gently ruffled Finn's hair. And when they reached the end of the pier, the tide was rising and the water covered the wood with cool waves that lapped at Finn's ankles. And he looked around and saw an old lantern left by fishermen and picked it up gently, wiping the glass clean with his sleeve, and inside he found a warm candle that was almost gone. So he placed the pale blue sea glass around the candle and saw that the glass made the candle flame glow softly in a blue light. So he closed the lantern and said, "This will be the light for the dark waters." And he walked to the edge and opened the lantern door, and light spilled out in a soft beam that danced on the water, making the harbor look like a place of magic. And then the shell in his hand whispered, "Now call your friend, Crabbie." And Finn knelt and called, "Crabbie, come here." And the crab climbed up the pier board by board until he reached Finn. And the shell then said, "Speak the name of the one you wish to save." So Finn looked at the sea and said, "Marina," because he had seen a small sea turtle struggle in a tide pool last week. And when he finished saying her name, he saw a shape move under the lantern light, and slowly a small green sea turtle came up, its flippers moving weakly, and it looked at Finn with tired eyes. And Marina had a crack in the side of her shell that made Finn feel sad, but he knew he could help, so he reached into his bucket and took out a piece of soft seaweed that he used for cushions in shell collections, and he laid it down on the pier. And with gentle hands he lifted Marina out of the water and placed her on the seaweed, and Marina closed her eyes and seemed calm. And then Finn took water from his bottle and poured it over Marina's shell, and the shell whispered, "Sing to the sea." So Finn remembered his mother's lullaby and sang a soft song about the moon and the stars and the listening waves. And as he sang, the lantern's candle glowed brighter and the shell began to hum in his hand, and the crack on Marina's shell grew faint until it was almost gone. And Marina opened her eyes and moved her flippers as if to say thank you, and Finn smiled and patted her softly and said, "You are safe now, friend." And the shell whispered, "You have a kind heart, brave child." And Finn felt proud and gentle, and when Marina was strong enough he gently returned her to the water, and she swam a small circle and nudged Finn's toes in goodbye. And then she slipped into the sea and disappeared in the dark water beyond the pier where the waves still glowed faintly, and Crabbie clicked happily and Finn closed the lantern and put it back on the wooden post, and the shell whispered, "Keep this light when you feel lost." So Finn wrapped the glowing sea glass and the shell in his scarf and placed both in his pocket, and at that moment the tide carried a wooden bottle to the pier, and inside the bottle was a small rolled paper with a drawing of a lighthouse high on a cliff. And the shell whispered, "Find the lighthouse next." And Finn looked at Crabbie and they both knew this was another call to adventure, but the sun was low in the sky and his mother was waiting by the door. So Finn said, "We will do this soon," and he thanked the shell and the sea for their help, and Crabbie scribbled happy marks in the sand with his claws, and they walked back along the shore, with Finn holding Crabbie on his shoulder and the lantern swinging in his hand. And when they reached home, Finn's mother was there with a warm towel and a bowl of soup, and she smiled and said, "I see you have been busy." And Finn showed her the shell and the sea glass and told her all that he had heard and done, and his mother hugged him and said, "Kindness and courage can light the darkest path." And Finn placed the shell and the glass on his windowsill so the moon could shine on them, and he ate his soup with Crabbie curled in a bowl beside him. And that night when he closed his eyes he dreamed of the lighthouse on the cliff and Marina's happy eyes and the shell whispering new songs, and he knew that more gentle adventures would come when he listened to the waves and the soft voices in small shells, because a child's heart that is kind can make the world a place of magic and light. And from that day on, whenever Finn walked by the sea, he always listened to gentle whispers and carried his lantern of kindness, and he knew his heart was ready for any soft call to adventure, and he slept with the shell under his pillow, and in the darkest night he could still hear its soft words, "Light and love are your gifts," reminding him that a little light makes the biggest differences.